Hello. Good evening because it's almost 6. Actually, it's 4 p.m. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and thanks for coming in here on this channel. As you always know, I make videos every evening. Before I was making videos in the afternoon while I'm driving. I will be doing that as well, but once in a while, right? Because when you are in the DC, you better drive. I better drive. Like everything is near me, so I don't drive. But today is the January 7, so it's the 7 days of the month, and it's the first week of January and the first week of 2026, and it's the first Wednesday of the 2026 and the first Wednesday of January. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about something that's been on the popular news since 2019. And as you can see here, there is a map. So I have the map that I'm working on. So this is the Google map. You already know this is I think it's called the Google Earth. So I'm gonna zoom in real quick, and I'm gonna bring something very important here. So we are United States. I'm in the US, right? And I'm right on here. Okay, so I am on this side here. So I don't know if you can see. But I'm gonna zoom a little bit back out and bring something very, very important. This part here. Okay, so this is the United States, this is the US on this side, right? This is the US, this is Canada, and right here there is a small island, a big island called Greenland. Okay, it's shaped like Africa or South America, if you will believe that way, but it's closer to Canada over here, right? And you can see we have Alaska. This is part of the United States. This is British Columbia, but then you have Canada on this side. So all these islands, all this belongs to Greenland. And of course on the side of it you have Iceland, then here you have Europe, right? And then all this is Greenland over here. And this part of here is also part of the Greenland. If I zoom back out, you can actually see that Greenland is not too far from the United States, and also is kind of closer to other nations in Europe, including Finland, Sweden, Norway, UK, and Ukraine, and Poland, and Germany, Italy, all the way going to other sides. So today's video is going to be my own thought, and you can see here, right? So we have Alaska on this side. So remember, Alaska here. We have Greenland here, and then we have Russia on this side. Okay, this is Russia. This is all huge Russia on this area. So the US has been trying to capture this area. It's trying to take over this part, and Trump has been trying to take over this area of Greenland and make it part of the United States. And Greenland, by the way, is part of Denmark. So it's a Denmark territory. This is Denmark over here, and they control it. They give it aid, or the aid comes from Denmark to Greenland, right? And the military, Denmark provides military operations and protections to Greenland. It's not a country, it's a territory on its own. It just happens to be under Denmark. All right. So US has been trying to take over Greenland. Now remember, US actually does have military bases in Greenland since 1956. Okay, and they have attempted to build nuclear reactors over there, and this has sparked controversy in Europe. Okay, so Trump, with his advance in military, including advancing in Venezuela to capture the minerals, he has also showcased the interest to take over the Greenland, whether it's to buy it or to or to control with the army. So this video is going to be talking about why I think personally we should take over Greenland. Okay, again, this is a very small area. As you can see, there is east coast of the United States. It actually is across the US than it is to Denmark. Okay, so this is Denmark over here. US is on this side, so we should technically have it's part of North America actually. Right? If you think about it, if you look at the map, it's part of North America. And if US can have armies and control over the Alaska, they should also be able to control this part of the world, giving US a more strategic military power into the North America and this northern part of the Atlantic region. NATO, because Denmark is part of NATO, this makes Greenland as part of NATO as well. So if US takes it, that would be more like a violation of NATO and the international community. So today's video is getting darker, so I'm turning fast. Today's video is going to be about Greenland and why do I think we need Greenland. These opinions are not going to be coming from me being biased towards the United States, and suddenly I have no interest in protecting Denmark, and I have no interest in protecting the United States. I can still go to Greenland as normal as a visitor. I can still, go to Greenland and check out the community, check out the area. And whether US buys it or not, we can still have access to Greenland, okay? It doesn't make it exceptional. However, I think there is more opportunities both for the United States and the world if US takes over Greenland and gets owned it and gets to settle its own military and other advanced economic output over there. Okay, so my number one reason why US should take over Greenland is the military, as I mentioned. Okay, Europe has shown over time that is declining, and Europe has lost so much power, especially when you can see how they don't have the cards, they don't have the power to negotiate with Russia, and Russia is advancing to take over Ukraine. And if it does, and if Russia can take on territory of Ukraine, they can take the territory over the other Ukraine, and Russia can actually take over all territories, and Russia, if Russia can regain back its own USSR, it will give it an advantage to even invade Europe, right? As Europe could fall in the hands of Russian Empire, and that will put the United States in a more of a vulnerability situation where they cannot be able to, defend themselves. We have seen Russia and Iran advancing in the South America, in the countries like Venezuela. And obviously Donald Trump and his administration proactively jumped in and stopped that from happening before it went too far, right? But Greenland will give a very good strategic military operations in the North Atlantic region to ensure that there is no interference, to ensure that there is what the military does what the US Army does in Greenland. They set up like a very big, I would say, like armed equipment that can deter and censor, capture any nuclear weapons that could come from that side. All right, because Russia will never, if Russia was to attack the US, it will never attack from the southern part. It will attack from the northern part, because US has a strong militaries from the northern part, right? It's why they do all the strategic military operations. So they build all the nuclear weapons. All those are built in the northern part of the United States. So with Greenland being in between, becoming a barrier between the United States and the Europe, makes it harder for the United States to advance on army and its military operations across the northern part. The second thing about US getting access to Greenland is the research, right? US has the largest amount of researchers in the world, obviously followed by China. But the Denmark, like I mentioned earlier, these nations in Europe are becoming less and less powerful, and they are becoming more pro-Russia over time, and they could become US. They could soon become US enemy, finding US struggling to regain its own reputation in the Russian in these European regions. So with researchers, we have seen how the Denmark has been giving a lot of entry to China companies to go in there and do the research, get rare earth minerals, and they don't give that advantage to the United States, right? But they give it to the other countries. So US needs to have access to that, make sure that there is no, because if they can't go in there and get those minerals, the Chinese, they can tomorrow bring in the Russians. Then tomorrow we will find out that they have military operations stationed there, and that could give a hard time to the United States, even dragging the US into the war that was not intended. The second thing that I think is very important in acquiring Greenland is protecting these three nations, actually four of them, right? You have Finland, you have Sweden, you have Norway, and you have UK. Okay, it's funny because the Denmark, which owns this territory, is not even like closer to this area. There's a huge distance, right? It's like really far. But Sweden, Finland, and Norway deserve to get protection from the US military operations. And if US was to own the Greenland and build a lot of military stations over there, build research, this will ensure that these territories have a full, sort of like a full protection for the United States, where they will be rarely have any issues, or even they will never even bother being destroyed or attacked by Russia, because these nations are closer to Ukraine, and as we know already, like Russia is advancing toward these areas like Belarus, right? So that, even like Denmark, for example, Denmark is not even like closer to being threatened by the US, by the Russia, but it could, right? But nations like Finland deserve the US protection. Nations like Sweden deserve the US protection. So does Norway. So does Denmark. And I know for sure for myself that NATO cannot protect these countries, because NATO has failed to protect the Ukraine from Russia's aggression. Now US is the only one that is being involved, is the one that's providing high strategic military operations, high level intelligence. It's that is providing high equipment, right? Spending money, recruiting soldiers, right? Then it's also involved in the negotiations. So if US has to be the one doing all the work, despite having NATO in place doing really nothing, maybe not nothing, but doing very little, then should be that the US should have the access to at least a place like Greenland, and then once US has access to Greenland, then they can advance to all these small islands that I see on a map, and I'm sure that will give US more advantage in preventing countries like Russia from aggressively. And there could be also military collaborations between Russia and the United States. Who knows, right? Because I think Putin is willing to negotiate with the United States if there was compromise or some sort of like negotiations between on how they can govern this part of the region. This region is rich in minerals, so there's a lot of minerals in this area. But let's talk about trade, economy. If US was to advance to this part of regions, we could see an advance in trade. Russia has a lot of oil that is selling, that has been shipping to Europe many times, and you never know, we could have a huge oil reserve in Greenland coming from Russia, and a lot of ships shipping oil to Greenland, and we can have a huge oil reserve in Greenland if it's acquired by the United States, and that will help the US and the entire world. That will help the United States have a huge oil reserve, collaborating with Russia, because so I think there are many other reasons why we should have Greenland, but I think that US should definitely have Greenland. I don't see any reasons why should Denmark keep Greenland if it's not even close to them. Like, there's a huge distance between them and the United States. Denmark has cried, complaining that US is trying to use the military operations. This could but might not happen. If US, I don't think they should ever use the army to take over Greenland. They will use more negotiations. But the end of the result will be that Greenland needs to be part of the United States. Okay, especially if Europe is demanding US protection, then Greenland should be part of the United States. It's clearly is going to be part of the United States. It's really close to the United States. So it should be part of the United States, right? So that's what I think. That's what I think, and I think this is something that should be obvious. Why it should be something that we, Denmark need to think through and try to think about it. Right, Russia has given the US Alaska, right, and Alaska has been doing great. If Alaska was part of the Russia today, it would be extremely poor. It would be in a huge poverty. Today, Alaska is advancing as the army minerals are well reserved, well used perfectly, right? The tourism is booming, the economy is booming, jobs are pretty high, research is going on over there. So it's a proof that if US takes over this territory, it could eventually do better. Okay, I'm not saying the territory is bad right now, but it's in a very weak position, to the point where if Russia can advance toward this, if Russia can take over Ukraine, which it could take over Ukraine. If it takes over Ukraine, or not just Ukraine, but also it could advance on the northern part of Russia, as it's been doing so for the last few years or so, right? It's been advancing towards that area, and it doesn't have to be Ukraine. It can just be advancing towards that area, right? That could also hurt the United States. But the biggest fear for the US is the nuclear weapons that is being built, not just by Russia, but other countries like Iran, that is working on nuclear weapons. So that's just what I think, all right, why US needs this Greenland. So US has been trying so hard to get this area. I know that Trump's son has gone in there, has visited, right? I also would love to visit this place. But either way, US deserves to have and own and control Greenland for the national security. It's not for, there's nothing to take in Greenland. It's an ice area, right? But the territory is a strategic military for the US operations to make sure that they keep North America safe than anywhere else. Canada has already given US access to the northern region, giving to the army. I don't understand why would Denmark do the same thing, just give the United States access to this territory. That'll be it. US will never, take hurt the people. It's not like it's trying to hurt them. They're trying to actually advance and do better things, right? Advance military operations, advance strategic. So there needs to be some sort of like, and it's not a country. This is not a country. This is a territory. So it's an independent territory, and people of Greenland, they can decide which side they want to be at. Okay, they can still be part of Denmark or be part of the United States, but they still have the advantage of remaining in Greenland. And I don't know about Iceland, but also that looks like a wonderful place to be. But Greenland is huge. Okay, they have one of the largest park. Okay, and it is such a good place to be, to the point where if it's owned by the United States, we could see a huge boom in economic, and these small countries in Europe could benefit a lot the more the US advance towards this area, right? Countries like Finland, Sweden, even Ukraine, but Norway, Denmark, UK, France, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Iceland, Romania, Poland. These countries could benefit a lot as the US advances toward the Northern Atlantic region, Northern Atlantic area. So that's what I have for today. I mean, I really don't understand why Greenland is very hesitant, considering that if US provides the military operations, they will also have guaranteed security for them, and this could also give a good relationship with the United States, with Denmark. There has been a comparison between US acquiring Greenland versus US trying to take over Venezuela. Those are two completely different situations, where in Venezuela the country used to rely on the US. Okay, there were so many companies operating in Venezuela, and when the government changed, the new leader Maduro sort of started seizing all the wealthy, seizing all the money, and taking over all the US companies, firing all the employees, firing all the government employees, killing, and putting himself as a dictator. That was not a big deal. No one cared about that. But then even after he lost the election, people didn't like him. He refused to leave the election. He refused to resign. Right? He refused to leave the power. So this has nothing to do with the U.S. Operating in Venezuela. This is something that is very is part of the U.S. national security, and it's needed for the Europe to think through. Okay, so Europe needs to think through, because Europe is declining. Okay, it's getting darker now. Europe is declining, and the only way Europe to be saved is to rely on the United States security. Right? Many countries around the world, including the US, wants to see Europe collapsing, right? But luckily, US, even though it was enemy to the Europe, particularly for the British colonies, US has shifted it back, right? It has changed its own tune. After World War II, Europe saw US to be as a good ally, as a good friend, as a person to rely on. But there are so many damages, there are so many sacrifices that has been put into the Europe to protect this continent, right? And that needs to be paid back. And the US asks nothing but says, hey, we don't ask much, we just want to give us the territory that we can build our armies there, right? Develop our own scientific military equipments, and that's it. That's what they're asking for, right? They can take care of everything else, right? So that's what I have. That's why I think that Greenland needs to be part of the United States, needs to be part of the US control, and I hope that Denmark will think about it. They will. I don't know if they have a parliament. I think they have like a kingdom or something. So I hope they will sit down and think about it. And I don't want to see this turning into a war, and of course it will take a few days to finish this war. Like and this would harm the US and European relationship. But the point here is that Europe needs to cooperate and work with the US to ensure that national security here remains a priority than anything else. So other than that, thanks for watching. Like always, ciao ciao, bye bye, adios.